What was the worst adult tantrum that you guys witnessed? I saw a woman come into the subway I worked at 9 a.m. and scream at us because we no longer served pepperoni. It was apparently so awful that it not only ruined her day, but her entire life. She vowed never to return and stormed out. My boss and I were both standing there flabbergasted. We had never stopped selling pepperoni. In fact, I had just finished restocking its container. Neither of us had any clue what she was on about. A sales guy I worked with just earned a huge commission on a multi-million-dollar mortgage. Some of us convinced him he should take us out to dinner because we helped, and he was a good sport. And we, sales guy, and 3 low-wage earning women from support staff, went out to a local pub. The bank president was there, which was not unusual. He made rounds of all the local places most nights after work. He came over to say hello, and when he found out why we were there, he got angry that he hadn't been invited and started yelling at us and banging his fists on the table. Then he went back to his friends at the bar. We decided he had been joking. There was no way he could be angry at us for that, so we decided we'd be funny too. We asked the server if she would bring him the check, but don't really leave it with him, and she thought it was funny too, so she did. He was not kidding. I've never seen a grown man have such a public tantrum in my life. He was screaming at us until we got up and left and would not let us take the check back. I went to work the next morning, and my boss, who was supposed to be with us but had something come up, was coming out of the president's office. And this guy, who did not swear in front of women, wanted to know what the F we did to make his boss so mad that he was trying to order my boss to fire the guy that got the commission. Later on, we figured it out. Because of that commission, the sales guy earned more money that year than the bank president. A woman standing up mid-flight and angrily, loudly demanding that they land and let her off the plane immediately because she believed an air hostess had been rude to her. In her words, she refused to waste her money on an airline that employed rude people and would not spend one moment longer on the plane. She began yelling very aggressively while the staff tried to calmly explain to her why they cannot land. Eventually, she was restrained. We were all 18, so technically adults. Anyway, this girl I knew in college was the typical spoiled rich girl. It was early into freshman year at the dorms, and I was part of her friend group, but we really didn't know her long enough or well enough at that point. It was her birthday, and she wanted all of her friends to go out to dinner at a nice restaurant to celebrate with her. But none of us had cars because we all lived on campus. The group was too big to get Ubers for everyone, so someone suggested we take the bus to the restaurant. She was freaking out because she had never taken the public bus anywhere. But we all got on, and it was a short 10-minute ride to the restaurant. We're all sitting at the table and enjoying ourselves, and suddenly this bee breaks down at the table and sobs because she's so disgusted and ashamed that she had to take the bus to her own birthday party. Like it was something only poor people do. I just couldn't wrap my head around how privileged she was. That totally killed the mood. I had a few happen when I worked the deli counter at Safeway. The deli closes before the store does because it takes considerable amount of time to clean and sanitize everything from the fryers to the slicers. The tantrum that sticks out more than any is when a guy came in about 5 minutes before I'm due to punch out. He tells us he needs a lot of fried chicken, 10 orders of 8-piece dark meat. My coworker and I are mopping the floors. The heat case is off and cleaned, the salad's covered, and the fryers are drained. We couldn't have looked more closed if we stuck a neon sign over our heads saying so. We tell him that we can't fulfill his order. He goes ballistic. I've never seen anything so disproportional. I'm guessing he had a really bad day, and we were the poor schmucks that got the brunt of his pent-up frustration. He rants that we're lazy and incompetent, and just to turn on the effing fryers, just turn them on and make my effing chicken. My coworker tries to use his best deep, calming voice to explain that even if we were to fill the fryers, it takes a long time to even heat them up to the right temperature. The guy stomps off, and we think that's the end. Manager comes over, checks on us, we say we're fine, and she goes back to the front. We're just about done when the angry guy comes back, not even saying anything. He yanks open the cool case front and starts throwing all the salads at us. My colleague got a face full of coleslaw, and I ended up with a foot covered in seafood salad. After the salads, he takes the lunch meats and starts spiking them on the ground as if we had just scored a touchdown. By now, the manager is rushing over. The angry guy then storms out past her and out of the store, but the police station is quite literally next door, so he didn't even get to his car before they stopped him. Yes, we pressed charges. No, the smell of seafood never fully left my work shoe. Friend's ex-girlfriend, then 24, about 12 years ago in a pub just before closing. She tried to buy a drink and was refused because she'd already had too much. She very visibly had. Her full reaction included throwing a coaster at the barmaid, accusing the barmaid of just being jealous that "I've got bigger tots than you," while pulling down her top to briefly demonstrate the aforementioned bigger tots, sweeping all the glasses off the bar to smash on the floor, kneeing a mate in the balls for trying to restrain her, accusing two guys at the table behind her, who she hadn't interacted with at all, of perving on her, screaming at the bar manager that he needs to fire that CWB working here, spitting on the floor several times, turning back to the guys behind her and accusing them of spiking her drink and planning to R her, screaming at a random woman on the other side of the pub that "your boyfriend wants to F me anyway," punching me in the face for trying to restrain her, offering the same random woman the opportunity to take things outside and fight her, offering the random woman's boyfriend the opportunity to take things outside and fight her, offering the random woman's boyfriend the opportunity to take things outside for her to give him a BJ, informing the random woman's boyfriend that there was no way she'd ever give him a BJ, that she'd rather drink raw sewage than put his shriveled little micro D in her mouth, and that it would be the best BJ he'd never had, throwing 2 chairs across the room, trying to bite me and my friends as we try to physically drag her out of the pub, while she screams that everyone in there is a C, and she's coming back to burn the place down, screaming in my friend's face that he scratched her face, he hadn't, that it would probably scar, and he's a P because you're supposed to be Joe's best friend, and now he's gonna have to look at that when we're having sex, getting the police called on her by the pub itself, 3 of the punters inside, 1 of the punters outside, and a guy from the shop over the road who'd seen it all kicking off through the windows, screaming at the police when they showed up that 2 guys in there tried to effing arm me, and they spiked my drink and pulled my top down, telling the female officer to F off and that it wasn't her fault that "you're such a fat, ugly, troll-faced B," and not to give her ish because she's just younger and hotter, spitting in the face of the female officer, getting immediately handcuffed and arrested for spitting in the policewoman's face, accusing the male officer of groping her while he led her by the arm to their car, calling me and my friend Judas C's because we're supposed to be friends and demanding to know why we didn't protect her. She was literally told, "Sorry, I don't think I can serve you any more alcohol." Had a woman park her car in the middle spot of the aisle, get out, and scream at me because I didn't want to move so she could have my parking spot. She started taking things out of her car and throwing them at me while cussing, screaming, and threatening to kill me. Several people called the cops, and someone got Walmart security to come out and try to manage the situation until the cops got there. When security came out, she tried to have them arrest me, and when they said they couldn't do that, she literally laid down on the ground and started kicking and screaming. All this because I didn't move to a different spot before loading up my husband, who was disabled, and our groceries in the car. She ended up getting arrested and charged with assault and making terroristic threats. Worst part was, 1, she parked behind me so I couldn't have moved even if I wanted to. 2, there were 2 parking spaces right behind me that were empty and not handicapped spaces. I was in a handicapped space and she didn't even have a tag that would have allowed her to park there. Attending to a car versus power pole in North Brisbane a few years back, driver had gotten out of the car by himself, front passenger was trapped and needed to be cut out of the wreck, cutting through the front pillar to start the process, and I feel something hit me in the back, turned off the saw, and turned around expecting to see an ambo or something similar, and the driver punches me in the face. He then started screaming at me and stomping his foot about me damaging his car. I push him back hard with the butt of the saw and tell him to calm down. He goes to swing again, and I tip my head down so he punches my helmet. One of the other firees grabs him by the hair and drags him away, and I go back to cutting the car open to get the trapped person. Ambos start working on the passenger, and I took the tools back to the truck, only to find the driver waiting for me, still ranting that I cut up his car and he was going to kill me. Flagged over the cop and had him on assault and death threats. He got done for reckless driving, occasioning injury, and the other charges. Not sure what the punishment was. 2 women in the grocery store. One's cart was blocking the shelf. Another asked her to move. She refused. The one who asked her rammed her cart with the toddler in it into the first cart blocking the shelf. One of the carts hit the woman who wouldn't move her cart, so she shoved the woman who rammed her hard enough to put her on the floor. Both are screaming B at each other and asking bystanders if they saw what the other one did to her. The woman on the floor calls the cops, demanding witnesses. The toddler in the cart remains unperturbed, which makes me wonder if this is a norm. The stalker and I, who witnessed the exchange, quietly slide into the next aisle. I work at a humane society. We do adoptions on a first come, first serve basis. We had a super cute kitten up for adoption. All kittens are cute, but it was fluffy and compact, calendar material, and this kitten was very popular. I think it had been posted on social media, and we were getting a dozen or so people calling and asking about the kitten. This mid-20s couple came in, non-English speaking, so there was a language barrier. They asked if the kitten was available for adoption, and at that point the kitten was currently being adopted. We told them no, the kitten was adopted, and the girl began arguing with her boyfriend in another language, then fell to the ground, sobbing. The boyfriend then asks if they can have the info of the adopter so they can call them and buy the kitten. We told them no, we can't release their info. They continue arguing with us before turning and going down the cat hallway, looking for this kitten like we're lying. I went to the room in which the adoption was happening and quickly took the kitten into the back and got it into a cardboard carrier so the couple couldn't see the kitten. The couple then stationed themselves in the lobby looking for the kitten, so we had the adopter go around back and gave them the cat. Worked security at McDonald's. Some of the tantrums I've seen from grown-A people at 3 a.m. is amazing. Usually just hard not to laugh at them and make it worse. My favorite was the guy who couldn't use the toilet, so he threw his food on the floor and stormed out. Then tried to come back in but wasn't allowed, but thought he deserved a refund for the food he threw. He stood outside for an hour and shouted. Back when I used to manage a Hollywood video, we had a promo where if you rented 2 new releases, you would get a bag of M&Ms for free. We understandably ran out very quickly and weren't getting another order until next week. An elderly gentleman comes in with 2 movies and asks about his candy. I tell him, unfortunately, we're out and we won't have more until the following week. The dude says, well, then where's my voucher for a free bag when you have them again? I explain that's not how it works, and it's while supplies last. Apparently this was completely unacceptable because he starts raving about how we're all a bunch of idiots who don't want to work real jobs and that we're never going to go anywhere in life and how we're stealing from him. I let him yell while the other customers are telling the guy to get the H out and grow up. I finally say, look man, I'm just doing my job, okay? We don't have any M&Ms and I can't do anything for you. He slams his rentals down on the counter and says, you know who else was just doing their job? Joseph Goebbels. Then stormed out to the taunts of other customers in line. So yeah, that's the day I got compared to a Nazi for running out of M&Ms. I was running a shift and they wanted a refund. After I said no because you haven't purchased the item from our company and it has another company's logo on it, they basically started stamping their feet and making a scene. Eventually they said if I don't give them a refund, they'll poo on the floor. Out of curiosity, I called their bluff and I was like, okay, do it. They dropped their trousers and pooped right there in the middle of the checkouts. They got a lifetime ban for that and I had to clear up poo, but at least I got a funny story out of it. Had a drunk obese dude refuse to accept that it was time for him to go home. He rolled himself under the craps table and kept trying to punch our ankles. We kept him penned in and called the cops, trespassed him off the property for a year. My neighbor threw a screaming, cursing hissy fit and threatened to hang himself if I wouldn't rake his yard for him. I didn't rake it, and he hasn't hung himself yet. My aunt got drunk on Thanksgiving and literally punched the turkey because we didn't take enough pictures of the table. One time, a guy almost punched the waiter at a sushi restaurant, all because the fish was raw. I was working customer service when an old man and his wife wanted to speak to Geek Squad about his iPhone. When I advised they were all busy with appointments, so he'd have to schedule an appointment and come back or call Apple tech support, he flipped. He screamed at me about not helping when he requested it and saying he was going to get his gun, come back in, shoot me first, and then shoot up the place. His wife froze. When I told my managers, they didn't take me seriously at first because he's just an old man. Finally, they escorted him out and watched him sit in his car for about 20 minutes before driving away.